All right, let's jump into it. Today, we're going to be looking at William James,
Oh,
a
yeah.
giant in the world of philosophy, psychology,
Huge.
and even religion. We're going to be using excerpts from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy entry on William James. And
Great source.
yeah, it's a really great source. So as a
Yeah.
philosopher, I think you'll find this deep dive particularly interesting.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Get ready to unpack concepts like the stream of consciousness
Hmm.
and how our own temperaments might shape our philosophical views.
I love that idea. The stream of consciousness, it's so evocative, right?
Yeah, and it really gets at the heart of how James saw the world.
Exactly. He was all about
Yeah.
connections, seeing how things flow and interact.
So maybe we should start there with this idea that a philosopher's temperament influences their theories.
Okay.
How much of our worldview is shaped by, who we are at our core?
This is something that I think every philosopher grapples with, right?
Yeah, for
Right?
sure.
And James, he noticed this really interesting pattern in philosophical debates, this kind of clash between what he called tough-minded and tender-minded thinkers.
What do you mean by tough-minded?
So tough-minded folks are all about facts,
Okay.
a very materialist viewpoint, maybe even a little bit of pessimism thrown in there.
So almost like a stoic leaning,
Right.
focused on hard realities.
Exactly. Hard realities,
Okay.
no nonsense.
And then on the other side, we've got tender-minded.
Yes. Tender-minded thinkers, they tend more towards idealism, optimism.
Okay.
Religious views, they see the world through a much different lens.
So where do you see yourself falling on that spectrum?
That's a good question. I think...
Or even how that's changed over time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you think your own temperament is shaping your views?
Yeah, that's definitely something I'll have to think about more.
It's a question worth pondering.
But for now, let's move on to one of James's most famous works,
Okay.
The Principles of Psychology.
Oh, yeah. Big one.
This book, it's just this fascinating blend of everything, physiology,
Perfect book.
psychology, philosophy, even personal reflections.
It really is groundbreaking in how he just breaks down all the traditional boundaries between disciplines.
Yeah, and you can tell that James was a master at kind of weaving together all these different threads of knowledge
For sure.
to create this richer tapestry of human experience, right?
Yes, and he gives us these amazing concepts like the stream of thought. That idea that consciousness isn't static, but it flows like a river. It's ever-changing.
Yeah, I love his description of a baby's impression of the world.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
One great bleemin' buzzing confusion. It captures that feeling of being overwhelmed by sensory input perfectly.
It does, and it really highlights this idea that our experience is not this neat and tidy thing.
Right.
It's messy, it's dynamic, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
And then there's his exploration of habit.
Oh, yeah, habits.
He didn't just see habit as some kind of psychological quirk, but as this physical principle with real ethical implications.
That's where it gets really interesting, right? He's connecting our everyday actions to this larger ethical framework.
Absolutely. It's not just about abstract ideas floating out there,
Yeah,
It's about how those ideas impact our lives, our actions.
our lived experience.
Exactly.
And that leads us perfectly into his concept of pragmatism.
Okay, so for a philosopher trying to grasp pragmatism,
Right.
what's the core idea here? How did James approach truth through this lens?
Okay, so think of pragmatism as this philosophy of practicality.
Okay.
For James' truth, it isn't some static entity out there waiting to be discovered.
Right.
It's dynamic. It's something that becomes true because of its positive consequences in our lives.
So truth is constantly being tested and reshaped by our experiences.
Exactly. It's a process, not a fixed endpoint.
Interesting. So how did James illustrate this concept?
Oh, he used a lot of really great examples, but one that stands out is this idea of a man chasing a squirrel around a tree.
Okay, chasing a squirrel, what is...
I know it sounds a little whimsical for a philosophical debate, but the
Yeah.
question is, does the man go around the squirrel?
So how does that relate to pragmatism?
Well, the dispute hinges on how you define going around, right?
Okay.
And James argued that by clarifying the practical consequences of each definition, the seemingly irresolvable argument can be settled.
So pragmatism, it shifts the focus from abstract definitions
Yes.
to real-world applications.
Exactly. It's about what works, what makes a difference in our lives.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, I know James didn't shy away from the more metaphysical side of things either.
Oh, no, not at all.
Tell me about his concept of a pluralistic universe.
So this emerges more in his later work, A Pluralistic Universe. He envisioned a universe that's wild
Oh,
and open, teeming with possibilities,
okay.
but also shaped by human powers.
So it's not this deterministic closed system.
Not at all. It's a universe that's brimming with potential, and human agency plays a crucial role in shaping it.
Were there any other thinkers who influenced this view?
Oh, absolutely. He had great admiration for philosophers like Fechner and Bergson.
Okay.
They all shared this vision of the universe as alive and interconnected.
What do you mean alive?
Well, Fechner, for example,
Yep.
he even believed that consciousness wasn't limited to humans,
Oh, wow.
but that it permeated all levels of existence.
So like consciousness in everything.
Exactly, a very radical idea.
Did James fully embrace that view?
While he might not have explicitly endorsed every single detail,
Yeah.
he was definitely open to the idea of a wider spiritual environment that interacts with our consciousness.
Interesting.
He explores this further in his work on religious experiences. But the key takeaway here is that James saw the universe as this vibrant, interconnected whole,
Right.
where human consciousness is not separate, but woven into the very fabric of reality.
It's a really fascinating concept. And speaking of challenging traditional thinking, let's talk about radical empiricism.
Okay, let's do it.
What did James mean by that?
So it all hinges on this idea of pure experience.
Yeah.
Imagine this fundamental stuff that's neither mental nor physical,
All right.
but the raw material from which both mind and matter are constructed.
So this pure experience, it's like the building block of reality itself.
Precisely. It's through relations and connections
Right.
that this raw experience takes shape and forms the world as we perceive it.
So it's a very different way of seeing the world than the traditional dualistic thinking.
Absolutely. It's a radical departure.
And I'm guessing this idea has had a ripple effect on other philosophers.
Oh, absolutely. Thinkers like Husserl and Russell were influenced by James's radical empiricism.
Wow, so his impact is still felt today.
Oh, for sure. His
Yeah.
ideas continue to challenge and inspire us to this day.
Well, we've only just scratched the surface here.
I know, right?
It's clear that William James's ideas have had a profound impact on philosophy and beyond.
Oh, absolutely. He was a true visionary.
Yeah, and we're just getting started. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll unpack the implications of radical empiricism
Oh,
and explore how it shapes James's views on knowledge, truth, and even the self.
can't wait. I'm really looking forward to that.
This is definitely a journey no philosopher wants to miss,
For sure. It's going to be good.
so stay tuned.
All right, yeah.
Okay, so welcome back to our exploration of William James.
All a good pleasure.
Last time we left off with that idea of pure experience, the raw material of reality.
It's a heady concept, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So how does this pure experience actually connect to his radical empiricism?
Well, you see, James felt traditional empiricism, it was just too limited.
Okay.
It just couldn't fully capture the richness of our experiences.
Yeah.
But radical empiricism takes it further.
Uh-huh.
It says relations, they're just as real as the things they relate.
So like they're not just mental constructs or something?
No. They're not just in our heads.
Okay.
They're directly experienced elements of reality.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, think about seeing a table, right?
I get it.
Traditional empiricists, they would break it down into individual sensations.
Okay.
Color, texture, shape.
Makes sense.
But for James, the tableness of the table,
The tableness.
that inherent unity that we perceive,
Right.
that's just as crucial to the experience. That relation, the way those sensations come together into a meaningful whole,
Yeah.
that's fundamental. It's a directly experienced aspect of reality.
So it's not just about the pieces, but how they fit together.
You got it. The connections matter just as much as the individual elements.
And this isn't just a static thing, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. Remember, the stream of thought.
Right.
Consciousness flows. It's interconnected. Radical empiricism sees the world in the same way,
Okay.
as this dynamic interplay of relations, always in process.
Always changing and moving.
Always.
So how does this then impact our understanding of knowledge and truth?
Well, for James Darrolge, it wasn't about passively mirroring some pre-existing reality.
Okay.
It's an active process.
So we're not just, sponges soaking up information.
No, they're just passive recipients.
No, I'm engaging.
We're actively engaging with the world, selecting, interpreting,
Creating meaning.
creating meaning. You got it.
So then is there like a subjective element to knowledge then?
I think there's a balance.
Okay.
Our interpretations are definitely constrained by the world, by our experiences, but we also bring something to the table.
We contribute.
It's a co-creation in a way.
So we're not just uncovering some objective truth that's out there.
Not exactly, and this ties back into his pragmatic view of truth.
Ah, yes, truth as a species of the good.
Right.
It's not absolute, but something that's useful.
It emerges through its usefulness in our lives, exactly.
And radical empiricism kind of supports this then.
It does. Truth is not static. It's constantly being tested and refined through our experiences.
Okay.
There's no guarantee that we'll ever reach some final absolute truth.
It's a process.
It's an ongoing process, exactly.
So then how do we even approach philosophical disputes then? If everything's in flux, how do we settle disagreements?
Well, by shifting the focus, right? From abstract arguments to practical consequences.
So what works?
What works?
Yeah.
What helps us navigate the world?
Make sense of our experiences.
That's where the value lies.
It's a different way to think about truth and knowledge.
For sure.
Now, I'm curious how radical empiricism relates to the idea of the self.
Well, remember, James saw the self as a stream of consciousness.
Right.
Constantly changing.
Yeah.
Not some fixed entity.
Okay.
And radical empiricism, it takes this even further.
How so?
Even the self is a process, a dynamic construction emerging from our experiences and interactions with the world.
So it's not a fixed me, but a continually evolving process.
You got a process of becoming.
Becoming, okay.
And, this has ethical implications.
In what way?
Well, if the self is a process, right, we have this responsibility to shape it,
Okay.
to cultivate our character through our choices and our actions.
Interesting.
We're not just stuck with who we are at any given moment.
It's an empowering way to think about it.
It is. We're not just passive products of our environment.
We're active participants.
We're active participants in shaping who we are.
I like that. Yeah. Before we move on, though, I do want to touch on James's views on religion.
Okay, sure.
I know he devoted a lot of thought to this area.
Oh, he did. And as you might expect, he took a very pragmatic approach.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he wasn't concerned with proving or disproving religious doctrines.
Okay.
He was more focused on the lived experiences of religious individuals.
So, like, how they experience the divine, how it impacts their lives.
Exactly what value they derive from it.
So it's more about the practical effects of religious belief rather than its absolute truth.
Precisely. He observed that religious experiences, they often share common features.
Okay.
Regardless of the specific tradition.
Like what?
Well, a sense of ineffability.
Ineffability.
A feeling that the experience is beyond words.
Okay.
A feeling of noetic quality, as if gaining a genuine insight or revelation.
So there's the sense of knowing something beyond just emotion.
Right. And for James, if religious belief provides comfort, meaning purpose,
Then it has value.
it has value regardless of whether it can be definitively proven.
Interesting.
He embraced the diversity of religious experience as part of the richness of human existence.
It's another example of his focus on individual experience.
Absolutely.
And how it shapes our understanding of the world.
And how we create meaning in a world that often feels uncertain. That's something we're going to delve into even further as we continue to explore William James.
Okay, I'm excited for that. Welcome back to our deep dive into William James.
It's been a wild ride.
It has, from psychology to metaphysics, to that radical idea of pure experience.
He really covered a lot of ground.
He did. And now I think we're ready to tackle the big question.
Okay.
What does it mean to live a meaningful life, especially in a universe that James saw as so open and pluralistic?
It's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And James, he doesn't offer us any easy answers.
Right. He rejects the idea of some fixed, preordained meaning to life.
Right. For him, meaning is something we create.
So it's not about finding some universal truth out there.
No.
But about forging our own paths.
Exactly. We create meaning through our choices, our actions, our engagements with the world.
It's both liberating and kind of daunting.
Oh, absolutely. We have the freedom to define our own values.
Right, but also the responsibility to make those choices.
In a world full of possibilities.
It's like being handed a blank canvas and told to paint a masterpiece.
I love that analogy.
Where do you even begin?
Well, that's where I think James's concept of the will to believe comes in.
Okay.
Remember, he argued that sometimes we have to take these leaps of faith to commit to certain beliefs or actions, even without absolute certainty.
So we can't just sit around waiting for meaning to find us.
No, we have to actively choose what we value, what we're willing to strive for.
And those choices have real consequences.
They do. They shape our experiences, our relationships, ultimately the kind of life we create.
In a way, we're all philosophers then,
I think so.
navigating this sea of choices.
You're shaping our own personal philosophies.
Through our actions and beliefs. I love that. And it brings us back to his concept of a pluralistic universe.
Right. If reality is this constantly evolving web of relations,
Then it makes sense that there wouldn't be just one right way to live or to find meaning.
precisely James's radical empiricism, it naturally leads to this pluralistic view. He embraces the diversity of human experience.
So multiple perspectives, multiple truths, multiple ways to find meaning.
Exactly.
It's a very inclusive and tolerant perspective.
It is.
But how do we deal with the inevitable conflicts and disagreements that come up when everyone's creating their own meaning?
Well, remember his pragmatic approach to resolving disputes.
Right.
Focus on the practical consequences.
Try to understand where others are coming from.
Find solutions that work for everyone involved.
So it's not about winning arguments,
No.
but about finding common ground.
And working towards shared goals.
It takes empathy, open-mindedness, a willingness to compromise.
All things we could use a little more of these days.
I agree. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into William James.
We have.
From psychology to metaphysics, to the question of what it means to live a meaningful life.
His ideas, they really continue to resonate even today.
They do. He was a true intellectual pioneer.
Well, absolutely. I think he'd be thrilled to see us engaging with his ideas, debating, questioning.
Continuing the exploration.
Yeah, keeping the conversation going.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the brilliant mind of William James.
What a journey.
I hope this exploration has sparked your curiosity.
Given you some new insights?
Maybe even inspired you to do some more digging on your own.
There's always more to discover with William James.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the world of ideas.
See you then.